Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to warmly welcome all of you to our panel discussion. Today, we are diving into one of the most important topics nowadays, especially after we have been through a very tough pandemic over the last couple of years. Our discussion panel title today is going to be the lesson learned from COVID pandemic and the future of the preparedness and response in terms of research and development. In the past few years, we have seen how essential collaboration and innovation are in driving research and development. Today, we will explore how these lessons from COVID can help us accelerate R&D and prepare for future health challenges. Before we dive into our discussion, I would like to quickly introduce our distinguished panelists. Each of them bring a wealth and experience in research and innovation and healthcare. So while I want to cover their full bio, due to time, I will assure you you have some of the best minds in the field with us today. We'll start with Dr. Daniel Duke. He's a senior investigator and a chief of the Human Immunology section at the Vaccine Research Center at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. He also served as a chief of Genome Analysis Core and director of the PERS Pandemic Preparedness Program. Dr. Duke, work over the past 25 years has focused on the pathogenesis, prevention, and treatment of HIV and other infectious diseases. Also, today we have Dr. Naif Al-Harbi, is the Director of Public Health Emergency at the Gulf CDC in Riyadh. Over 15 years of experience in vaccine development, clinical trial, and translational research. He earned his Bachelor in Medical Microbiology, Master in Molecular and Medical Microbiology, and PhD in Virology from the University of Oxford. Also, we have Dr. Hussam Zawawi, is an Associate Professor of Clinical Microbiology at King Saud bin Abdulaziz University for Health Sciences. He specialized in antimicrobial resistance research, developing a diagnostic tool for superbug, and raising public health awareness about antimicrobial resistance. Dr. Hussam has collaboration extensively in the Gulf region and internationally, and has been recognized with award for his contribution to global health. Maybe I will start the discussion today with Dr. Luke, as you have been deeply involved in understanding the immunology response during the COVID pandemic. Could you please bring and share with us some of the key scientific lessons learned from the pandemic, particularly from the vaccine development efforts?
Thank you for the question. I think if there's one key lesson that we must learn and remember from the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic, is that the rapid development of vaccines and therapeutics, a response that is really unparalleled in human history, is that the rapidity of that development was almost entirely due to decades of investment in basic science research, and that most of that investment came from government funding. And simply put, that basic science research allowed us to be able to design a stabilized form of a type 1 fusion virus protein, such as is used by HIV or RSV or MERS or SARS-CoV-2. Design it in such a form that it can be presented to the immune system and elicit an effective immune response. The second lesson, again, an incredible development in science, is that the ability to be able to deliver that immunogen in the form of an mRNA LNP particle really revolutionized everything. That's because this platform is incredibly safe and incredibly rapidly manufactured. The third lesson is that we were able to mobilize the manufacturing of these vaccines extremely rapidly, and that was an engagement with pharmaceutical companies. So that was a private-public partnership. Also, healthcare infrastructure was absolutely critical. Hospital garages were turned into intensive care units. New hospitals were built. All kinds of mobile phone apps were used to track infections and track vaccinations. And of course, we mustn't forget the healthcare providers, the doctors and nurses who were mobilized, often at a risk to their own lives. And we also learned that the ability to do that, again, required a financial investment. So it came down to money, and a lot of that money was from the government. We learned this lesson because in many countries in the world, that investment was not there. For example, most countries in Africa were not able to mobilize a vaccine response. South Africa managed to do some incredible testing, but really quite poor vaccination. There's one other lesson that I'll mention, which is the political response. So I think the biomedical response, or the response from the biomedical community, was unbelievable, absolutely fantastic. The political response, I think, was generally not as effective. There were some countries where there was clearly an exception, but in some countries, I'm thinking of the country where I work, the messaging was often incoherent and sometimes contradictory, and often used as I would say, a cynical political tool. So the message for people like us, scientists, doctors, healthcare providers, is that we need to control the messaging, but also that it's difficult to control the messaging if it's being undermined by our own politicians. So those are the lessons that we learned.
I think you covered very crucial lessons that we have learned through the pandemic. And that will bring us together to kind of enhance the collaboration of research. And I know that you have started collaborating with the region here through NIAID. What do you think about the collaboration, and how is the capability and the capacity here for R&D to prepare for the future pandemic?
That's again, a very important question. I think, let's talk globally, first of all. We need to understand that pandemic preparedness, it's not just a healthcare issue. Pandemic preparedness is a security issue, because if your population has poor healthcare, then your economy is in poor shape. And if your economy is in poor shape, then the security of your country is in poor shape. The second thing we have to do is to define preparedness. And preparedness is being prepared to respond, not being prepared to be prepared. So in the United States, there was this big thing that there would be 3 months. This was the goal, 3 months from publication of the sequence of the virus responsible for the new outbreak until we have a candidate vaccine or monoclonal antibody, which I think is crazy, because Omicron can circle the globe 3 times in 3 months. So we need to have things prepared 3 months before the outbreak, not 3 months after the outbreak. So we started a program at the NIH called PREMISE. It's a pandemic preparedness program, and it's an anticipatory program to pre-position a repository, not a stockpile, but a repository of products, monoclonal antibodies, vaccines, and diagnostic tests. And we do this through immunosurveillance of populations globally and regionally, and we use that immunological knowledge to deliver these products. So briefly, what that means, that if the next pandemic is a coronavirus in 5 years' time, we would have on the shelf, ready to go, 5,000 monoclonal antibodies and 100 vaccine candidates to test, just small amounts of them. It would take a week or 2 to test them. Maybe 2 of them will work, but that's all you need to buy time when time is a factor. So the NIAID the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases has established a partnership with the MENAT regions.
Amazing.
And unfortunately, Mohammed Sayyid cannot be here. He's stuck in Beirut at the moment. And he was going to talk, so he sent me his slides, and he texted me and he said, Danny, will you read to them what I put? So I wrote it down on a piece of paper for you. The MENAT NIAID initiative, it has a mandate, and the mandate is the planning and execution of a strategic plan to promote collaborative research in the MENAT region and strengthen US MENAT research cooperation. It began as a result of COVID, and it occurred during the pandemic. It encompasses pandemic preparedness, antimicrobial resistance, immunologic genetic diseases, and what it entails are focus groups, meetings, collaborative projects, and the training of fellows. And this is a close collaboration with the RDIA, and we have to thank the RDIA and particularly Maha Mozaini for this. And there are three fellows from Saudi Arabia that are about to start at the NIAID for training very soon. We also have collaborative projects, a three-way project between us, the Palestinians, and the Israelis, which I think is a remarkable thing. We have a collaborative project with the Emiratis, and we have a collaborative project here in the Kingdom of South Africa, absolutely critical because of Hajj and Umrah. And there's exposure to masses of viruses. And I'll end by saying, a virus doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care where you live, it doesn't care how you vote, it doesn't care if your countries do not yet have diplomatic relations, because all it has is one job: to find you, to infect you, and to transmit to someone else. So collaborative research in the region and between all our countries is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
I really emphasize in what you're saying, that infectious disease and viruses has no border. Without collaboration, we cannot really fight the dissemination of this danger. Moving to Dr. Naif Al-Harbi, as a dear friend and colleagues working together for almost 15 years, his extensive research in vaccine, especially with developing vaccine in MERS, was a particular milestone in our research and development. Dr. Naif, can you please take us through the journey of developing vaccine in Saudi Arabia?
Thank you very much, Dr. Majid. I'm pleased to be among this panel. I think I need to speak louder to beat the next door stage, because they're getting louder than us. We were lucky at that time, to be in one of the leading research centers in Saudi Arabia, KMARC, which has all the component for developing a translation research product. In this case, was the MERS coronavirus. We were also lucky to have the collaboration with Oxford University to take the vaccine from early stage, in vitro stage, into mouse model experiments and camel vaccination studies, as well as phase 1 clinical trial. We were also lucky to have the support from Saudi FDA approving the conduct of the first phase 1 clinical trial in Saudi Arabia, because it's exceptionally important for the kingdom. And the journey was there because there was so much commitment and so much energy from all parties, also Ministry of Agriculture included, as well as Ministry of Health. So I remember all of our colleagues. I mean, the team was more than 50 people, some of them still in the National Guard, some of them in different places, where there is this commitment, there is urgency that we need to develop a vaccine for a potential pandemic of MERS coronavirus. But now, working in the Gulf CDC and the preparedness, you understand that being prepared, as you said, is not only being prepared to be prepared, and that's why sometimes the WHO and Gulf CDC and other agencies, they're talking about preparedness and then readiness and then response. So preparedness is the peacetime, so learning from that experience, we were in a peacetime more or less, because there was no healthcare setting outbreak of MERS coronavirus. We have this support from all organizations. But reflecting on it now, I think what was missing is that solidifying this project as a country project or as an institutional project. Whether Naif or Majid or whoever, the project is a country project that need to be taken forward, which I think it's happening with the Dr. Boussaid, who's moving this project further. But learning now for the next pandemic, I think we need multiple parties to come together in a steering committee or in a national project. Okay, we have issues with funding, we have issues with logistics, we have issues with the regulatory approvals, we have issues with the national IRB structure. But if there is a unified team, a task team, then the project could be sustainable. I think this is one of the lesson learned from that experience. So I think when it comes to preparing for pandemic, scientists would know that this disease could happen. It could cause outbreak. It could be a major problem. So the scientists are ready. The issue sometimes, as you mentioned, the political will, the drivenness of the regulators, the drivenness of the whole structure, I think it should be also aligning with the scientists. If you talk to our colleague here, scientists, they know that we need to develop something for vector-borne disease, for chikungunya or for Marburg, because we have the vectors in our country, and it's a matter of time that you have the disease happening here with the global connectedness and all of that. But if there is, and I'm happy, I'm not trying to be negative side, but I'm happy about now we see the existence of RDIA, we see the existence of Saudi NIH. These are enablers that should also support that. So preparedness for pandemic, it has so many components. Surveillance and one of them, in public health, in healthcare facility, in surveillance and all of that. R&D is a big, important part of preparedness. One of the examples that WHO is pushing for, and we also consider it, is that you have something ready for the scientists, like a pre-designed protocol, pre-designed study, intervention study or surveillance study or epidemiological study. Once you have the outbreak, you can investigate it from day one. You don't need to go to the hassle of collecting the team, getting the approvals and all of that. All you need to do is A and B, or replace A and B, or what disease, which part, how many sample size. So all of these are, I see it not very clear. COVID-19 showed us that we can do it. And you remember, I'm talking here more of the national level. Saudi Arabia, we see in COVID-19, there was the Ministry of Health funding, NIH fund, not NIH funding, the CACS funding. The other ministries also, Ministry of Education also stepped into trying to support. So when there is, colleagues also in different disciplines, stem cell, nanomedicine, they maneuver towards COVID, because it's very clear to everybody that you need to work on this. Preparedness, we need to imagine that there is a clear problem happening or approaching, and we need to be prepared for it. And from my humble insights, I think the vector-borne diseases are changing in the whole world. You see dengue in California, you see dengue cases in Italy, and already the dengue cases are in this country and some of the neighboring countries. So vector-borne disease with the climate change should open our mind for how to be prepared for this kind of disease. Thank you so much.
You have took all this great experience being in that real-time need for infrastructure and all the obstacles that you said, and you take it to the next level now as a director of public health emergency in Gulf CDC. What do you think how this can help to put a role in developing the R&D in the region?
I think what's one of the components that we need to look for is to aligning the scientific community, the academic groups, with the public health. So there are something happening in the public health arena that's not seen by the academic. I'm talking here generalizing, but most of the cases, if you talk to academic, they're focusing on their project. For example, if you talk to them about the Marburg outbreak happening now in Rwanda, which could happen and transmit into another country, I think that's an ink that we need to do. It's on us as a public health sector, but also on the academia and research. We need to close this gap, need to identify where are the missing important. Another point is, whenever it comes to the official work of public health, you're dealing with the official stakeholder. but you're missing the scientist and the academic. I think we need to include the academic and the scientists in all of our discussions to ignite the R&D preparedness at their side. Thank you.
This is a very amazing journey taken through a real experience of building the capability and capacity in Saudi Arabia to be able to respond rapidly for such a pandemic. Dr. Hussam, we share an interest of antimicrobial resistance as something that could be something that we can develop R&D. But through your experience in infectious disease and developing diagnostic to a pandemic, can you share with us your thoughts about how we can be prepared for the next pandemic?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Majid, and everybody for what you have contributed so far. I think it's quite obvious and important that apparently infectious diseases can be truly a serious matter. Probably before 2020, if we have stated this statement, people would be a little bit surprised because many of us did not really live the large pandemics of plague, for example, or cholera, which has quite a dark history in this particular part of the world. But we have witnessed how the globe has responded to COVID-19. And apparently, I think this experience should truly be utilized to well prepare us from all aspects. Of course, diagnostic is one of those, and I think one of the key lessons we have learned from the regulatory process, at least, is that we are truly a little bit agile and flexible whenever we want to. So let me be a little bit more precise. Nowadays, if you innovate any of the diagnostics tool, for example, you need to take it through different processes of regulatory processes in order to have these tests being readily available for clinical screening and testing. Yet many of us are wearing wearable technologies to measure our steps, for example. And these are not subjected to any of these regulations. Yet, when COVID-19 struck, we chose to be agile. And the US FDA, for example, pulled a very important card, and that card called emergency use authorization. What does that mean? It's basically they chose to soften their regulatory process in order to expedite the entrance of new technologies into diagnostics. Think about it. This is truly a transformative and game-changer application. It means that we have chosen to be a little extremely tough on ourselves, which has resulted in technologies that can provide results in days. I come from a microbiology background. For blood culture, we give at least 2 days to provide the results. That doesn't apply on COVID, of course. But you can imagine why, despite the existence of different amazing technologies, they do exist, but they fall into the valley of death, which is basically due to the regulatory process, which costs a lot of time and money, etc. So I think we need to exercise such cards, if you would. The emergency use authorization, probably we should not really make it a norm, but it's a moment to reflect on, and probably that will help us to expedite the way how we are taking our future innovation. This is, I think, from a diagnostic point of view. But I think Daniel has shed the light on an extremely important topic. I would like to rephrase it, please, if I may. It's health equity. It's a beautiful word that everybody around the world advocate for, and we are trying to make sure that health is equally available and distributed across the globe. When the reality hit, equality did not was not the truth. And that is evident by number when it comes to vaccination, for example. The least continent in the world received vaccination was Africa, which is the most needed nation. With limited infrastructure and health infrastructure, health equality was not exercised. So I think that's another important lesson we need to think about when it comes to COVID-19.
This is amazing that you shed a light on the flexibility and the agile for the R&D to move from basic research to translational research that can be implemented when it's needed and without all the obstacles that are facing the R&D. I think we are limited in time, and just before we wrap up, I would like to ask each of you for the final thought. Given everything we have discussed today, what is the one key takeaway that you believe is crucial for future pandemic preparedness? Start with you, Dr. Daniel.
Well, I'll repeat what I said before. It has to be collaborative. Collaborative research, basic research that's collaborative at the local level, at the regional level, and then at the global level.
Thank you very much. For me, I wanted to pick collaboration, because if you think Saudi Arabia, if you want to do a research, any research, anything and everything that you need is available. Infrastructure, talent, funds, approvals, but it's just not aligned together or scattered, fragmented in different institutions. Just linking opening. Imagine if you have a golden access to any facility in the country, you will do amazing jobs, right? You'll be very, very much prepared for any pandemic that's coming. So if we work on the collaboration and linking the national asset, the national organization, especially for the new generation of scientists to excel.
Dr. Hussam.
Dr. Majid, please allow me I have 2 points I would like to share. The first one, I think the government of Saudi Arabia has truly set the global practice and the benchmark for health in all policies when it comes to responding for infectious diseases. The high-level committee that has managed COVID-19 was actually many members from different stakeholders, including health sector, environmental sector, animal health sector, and many other sectors, education, etc., which has put the health and well-being of the population at its focus, but not only from a health point of view. That was actually the practice which should be practiced to tackle any zoonotic diseases or any emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. Health in all policies is truly the benchmark to tackle health problems, and of course that's not only for non-communicable diseases, but of course for communicable diseases and emerging infectious diseases. This is one. Second, we really need to remind ourselves that with peace, prosperity comes. Peace is the true endeavor to help the achievement and the global expansion and the growth in the scientific community. That is evident right out. There's a huge scientific achievements which we utilize today right after the Second World War, because world was in peace. And I think that's a very important message we need to remind ourselves for. And unfortunately, I'm filling the shoes of a very important person who needed to be here, Dr. Mohammed Al-Saigh, and unfortunately we could not have him due to the lack of peace. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this great lesson that we learned from COVID, from a very experienced scientist who has been through the pandemic and witness how it's very important to have, as you said, collaboration. Collaboration is something that will open the door for all the mind. I know in Saudi Arabia we have great human capital scientists with a great experience. Also, we have the facility and the infrastructure that will allow to accelerate preparedness for pandemic. Thank you very much for your insight, and thank you for attending this very important discussion. And I wish you to enjoy the rest of this exhibition.
Shukran.
Thank you very much.
يعطيك العافية. شكرا جزيلا.
Good.